Hi class, today we're going to be looking at the cash budget from chapter 8. In particular, we're going to be doing exercise 811, and we're going to be doing part of the cash budget, just the cash receipts portion of this budget. It says that the Shalimar Company manufactures and sells industrial products for the next year. And Shalimar has budgeted the following sales. Those sales are for next year. These are the quarter one sales, quarter two sales, quarter three sales, and quarter four sales. In Shalimar's experience, 10% of the sales are paid in cash. Of the sales on account, 65% are collected in the quarter of the sale. 25% are collected in the quarter following the sale, and 7% are collected in the second quarter after the sale. The remaining 3% are never collected. Total sales for the third quarter of the current year are $4,900,000, and for the fourth quarter of the current year are $6,850,000. Before we can put together the cash receipts portion of the cash budget that we're going to be doing, it's always a good idea to kind of break the information down, and that's what they've asked you to do in requirement number 1. What they want you to do is to calculate the cash sales and the credit sales expected in the last 2 quarters of the current year and in each quarter of the next year. So what they've done is they set this up as a table, and they put down in Cengage the quarter. You're going to be looking at the third quarter of the current year. And what you want to do is figure out the cash sales. And they told you that 10% of the sales are cash sales. So what you have to do is you have to pick up the third quarter current year sales, which is $4,900,000, and we would multiply that by 10%, and that's how we're getting the cash sales. The remaining portion of that, the other 90%, is going to be sales on account. So your credit sales are going to be $4,900,000 times 90%. That's how you get the credit sales for the third quarter. For the fourth quarter of the current year, the sales were $6,850,000. 10% of those are going to be cash sales. So 10% of $6,850,000 is $685,000. That's how you get the cash sales portion of this. The other remaining 90% of the total sales of $6,850,000 are your credit sales. So $6,850,000 times 90% are the credit sales for that period of time. In quarter one of next year, the total sales are $4,600,000. $4,600,000 would be multiplied by 10% for the cash sales, and 10% of $4,600,000 is $460,000. 90% of $4,600,000 is $4,140,000. So there's a pattern to these, class, and you need to look for the patterns. That's the way that you keep your information straight. In quarter two of the next year, the total sales are $5,100,000. Multiply these by 10% to get your cash sales of $510,000, and multiply $5,100,000 by 90%, and that will give you your credit sales. In quarter three, the total sales were $5 million. 10% of 5 million is 500,000, and 90% of 5 million is 4,500,000. In quarter four, 10% of the total sales are 760,000. 90% of 7,600,000 is 6,840,000. So this is 90% of your sales are credit sales, 10% are cash sales. Then they want you to construct the cash receipts portion of the budget. And so we're going to start by saying that we had cash sales. Cash sales, remember, were 10% of the total sales. And we already figured that right here. So as I did is I plugged in my cash sales in quarter one. I believe I'm off a line here, so hang on just a second. And let me cut that, move it down one line. My eyes are playing tricks on me today. Nope, that's not what I should have done. So hold on just a second. I'm going to stop sharing this with you for just a moment. Let me get my thoughts. Okay, I'm going to go back to my screen and share it with you. I just had some lines that were off, and so I thought it might confuse you. And so I wanted to make sure I had them all on the right lines there. So it just took me a few minutes to correct that. All right, so going back to our cash sales, our cash sales for quarter one comes in the next year. So quarter one in the next year, our cash sales are 460,000. So I simply copied the 460,000 there for my cash sales. You'll remember that your cash sales were 10% of your total sales for quarter one. And the sales for quarter one were 4,600,000. So 10% of those were 460,000, and 460,000 is what goes in this blank here. You're showing what's happened in quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four of next year. So in quarter two, we'd pick up the 510,000, plug it in. Quarter three is 500,000, and then quarter four was 760,000. The next thing they ask you for is what you received on account. Remember, you had 90% of the sales on account that you had recorded here. What we're going to be looking for is in quarter three of the current year. Quarter three of the current year, our total credit sales were 4,410,000. Of that 4,410,000, the instructions told us that 65% of those are going to be collected in the quarter of the sale. So if we're talking about quarter three, in quarter three, we've collected 65% of the credit sales. In quarter four, we would have collected 25%, because 25% are collected in the quarter following the sale. So in other words, in quarter three's credit sales, 65% are collected in quarter three of the current year. 25% of these credit sales would be collected in quarter four. The 7% would be collected in the first quarter of the next year. And so right here, we're looking at quarter one. So 7% of the credit sales in the quarter three of the current year are going to be collected at 7%. So C20 times C20 times 7% will give you the amount that you have received on account from quarter three of the current year. You actually received only 7% in quarter one. See, there's a pattern here, class. Of the sales on account, 65% are collected in the quarter of the sale, 25% in the quarter following the sale, and then 7% are collected in the second quarter following the sale, and then 3% are going to never be collected of our sales on account. So there's a pattern. You got to look for the pattern there. So on the next one, quarter four of the current year, in quarter four, we would collect 65%. In quarter one, we will collect 25% of the credit sales. So right here, this is 25% of the credit sales for quarter four of the current year. So C21, which is this, times 25% is how I got this amount that we are collecting in quarter one of the next year. There's a pattern to this. So we're looking at quarter four's sales. Remember, in quarter four's credit sales, this is the credit sales amount here, 6,165,000. In the quarter one of the current year of the next year, we would have collected 65% of those. In quarter two, we would collect 25%. And so in quarter two, we're collecting 7%. There's a pattern to this, class. 65% are collected in the quarter of the sale. 25% are collected in the quarter following the sale. And 7% are collected in the second quarter following the sale. So if we're looking at quarter four's sales, which we are here, in quarter four, we would have collected 65% of the credit sales. In quarter one, we would have collected 25%. And in quarter two, we would have collected 7%. And then the remaining 3% would not be collected because it was uncollectible. On the next one, quarter one of the next year. So for quarter one of the next year, the sales on account are 4,140,000. You're going to collect 65% in the month of the sale, which was quarter one. So this 2,691,000 is 65% of the credit sales in quarter 1 of next year. In other words, this is multiplied by 65% to get this figure here. This 4,140,000 of credit sales will be multiplied by 25% to get the cash that you would have collected from your sales on account. And then in the third quarter, we would have collected 7% of those credit sales. So it's 65% in the period of the sale. The credit sales are 65%, 25% in the second quarter after the sale, and then 7% in the third quarter after the sale. Moving on to quarter 2 of next year. Quarter 2 of next year, we would have collected 65% of our credit sales. So quarter 2 of next year is in cell address C23. We're going to multiply C23 times 65%, and that's how you get this figure here. We're going to multiply C23 times 25%, because that's the second month's percentage. And that will give you this figure right here. So of the quarter 2 sales on account, which was 4,590,000, in the quarter after the sale, we are collecting 25%. So this should be multiplied by 25% to get this amount here. 7% is collected in the next quarter. So of the quarter 2 sales, 4,590,000, multiply this by 7%, and that will give you 321,300. There's a pattern to it, class. You just got to practice. It's a brain teaser. In quarter 3 of the next year, we're collecting 65% of the credit sales. So 65% of 4,500,000 is this amount here. 25% of 4,500,000 is this amount here. So 1,125,000 is 25% of 4,500,000. And in the last quarter, you would have collected 65% of the credit sales. So 6,840,000 times 65% will give you the fourth quarter's cash that you have collected of the credit sales. And then what they wanted you to do is just total these. And so that's what I did there. Total each one of these. And those are the cash receipts for each one of the quarters. And this would be a budget. When we're talking about a cash budget, the first part of the cash budget is where you're collecting cash. So part of these were cash sales and part of them were sales on credit. In the next part of this, they've given you a what if analysis. They're doing basically the very same thing that you did before, except they've changed the percentage. And so if you read right here, it says the recession led Shalimar to top management to assume that the next year 10% of the credit sales would never be collected. So rather than where they have here 7% are going to be collected, or 3% are never going to be collected, 10% are never going to be collected now. So what you're going to do is you're going to collect 65% in the quarter of the sale, just like it said it was, and then 25% in the quarter following the sale. But we're not going to collect anything after that, because they had decided that 10% of the sales would never be collected. So start with your cash sales just as we did before. Cash sales are 10% of the total sales figure. And for quarter one, it's the same amounts that we had here. We just copied them in down here. Let's see, that's quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. Or you could have simply copied this down here. It's the same thing, because this is basically the same problem, with the exception of, instead of having 3% uncollectible at the end, 10% are going to be uncollectible. So in other words, it knocked out this 7 and 3% here. So all you had left were 65% and 25%. So in quarter three of the current year, they didn't even put this in Cengage, but I wanted to do it exactly like we had done before, because there's a pattern to this. In quarter three of the current year, quarter three sales, 410,000 were credit sales. You would have collected 65% in the third quarter, and then the remaining 25% in the fourth quarter. So by the time you got to the first quarter, there was nothing to be collected. It would have been zero. Of the fourth quarter credit sales is 6,165,000. 65% would have been collected in the fourth quarter. The remaining 25% would have been collected in the first quarter. They only wanted you to show what they collected in the first quarter, which was 25% of the credit sales that were in cell address C21. So this 6,165,000 times 25% is how I got this figure right here. So of the quarter one sales on credit, which would be these right here, we would collect 65% of them in this quarter, which is how I got the 2,691,000. 65% of cell address C22 right here was collected in quarter one. And of cell address C22, the remaining 25% would have been collected in the second quarter. So 25% of cell address C25 is how I got that amount of cash that we collected of the sales on account for the first quarter. For the second quarter, we collected 65% of cell address C23. So you can see here, this is where they got the figure times 65%. And then this would have been 25% of C23. For quarter three of the next year, 65% was collected in quarter three. So 65% of 4,500,000 is this amount right here. And then 25% of the 4,500,000 would go here. And in the last quarter, you collected 65% of the credit sales. So this times 65% is how they got the 4,446,000. Then you simply add them together. So there's a pattern to this class. It's kind of like a brain teaser at first, but once you get into the pattern, then you can see it's pretty simple. All they're showing is the first portion of the cash receipts budget, which is collecting cash or from cash sales or from sales on account. So that's all I want to talk to you about. I'm going to stop sharing the screen with you, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.